Yeah, I'm gonna push it.
Real good.
Dun 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 dun. Good evening, everybody.
I'm just waiting for my YouTube to catch up.
Yep, and I might have to just fiddle with the stream and then come back. It looks like a slideshow at the moment.
It does look like a slideshow. While we're talking about things looking like slideshows, I'm gonna set up people's expectations. I have lost my internet connection about a dozen times today. So if I suddenly vanish, it's not because I'm throwing all my toys out the pram and sulking. It's because I've lost internet.
Right.
Unless I'm throwing all my toys out the pram and sulking.
Which might happen. I also think I've got a cold, so if I start coughing, I'll try not to cough in your ears. I'll do that over here, and then I'll come back again. And speaking of coming back again, good segue, hey? I am just going to change one setting on OBS. I can't do it whilst it's live, so give us...
So thanks for joining us, everybody.
Give us a couple of minutes. I'll just change these settings, and we'll be back again. And Jan will keep you entertained in the chat. Be right back.
I will.
Just try that, see if that works. Okay. I need to change the vid resolution. Okay, I think
I found the setting. Sorry, I thought we were doing a musical.
Oh dear.
He thinks he's found the setting. He thinks he's found the setting. He thinks he's found the setting.
Well, we'll find out whether that's working.
That's the top of my head.
It is.
Why are we broadcasting my forehead? Okay. I mean, it's a very nice forehead.
Okay, but I can sort that. That's the easy bit. Absolutely fine. So here we have the top of Jan.
Yeah.
Right.
Always give them what they want.
Right, there's Jan. Let's go and grab a Michael. Oh man, I'm massive. Okay, so for your entertainment this evening, I have changed my canvas resolution on OBS, which has caused a few issues.
Welcome to the Michael Massive.
How are we doing this evening? This is how we construct our.
What is going on?
I know, right? I wish I knew. Right.
Oh.
And
so
that's about it.
I think there was an OBS update. Something's happened, but Michael was like, "Okay, we're ready." We press the button. It's like, that's weird. That's an easy fix. What goes and goes? Uh-oh.
It wasn't an easy fix.
Mikey needs to turn his mic down a bit, says Jenny.
I think Jan needs to be closer to his mic.
You are clipping in my ears.
Why, thank you. Hopefully that is a bit better now. I've actually got it a bit closer than I usually have. Woo! How are we doing, everybody, this evening? We are going to play around in Blender Python. I'm in the void at the moment. Just because.
So just to answer some of the questions, is Jan head of the stream? Yes. Is this a close-up to Jan's ideas? Yes. I'm sorry. We should have put a not safe for work warning up there. Is this Jan's dome cam? Yes, it is.
Are these actually? Yep. Anyway.
Yep.
Technical issues aside, I have a couple of announcements. Later this month, we are going to have one or maybe two course launches, so watch out for those. Erin's latest course, Geometry Nodes 3.3 and up, that is now fully subtitles as well. Our intention is to roll out subtitling to all active courses. It will take some time to do, but we are in the process of doing it now. The process we're actually using is firstly AI subtitling, but we're not publishing those. Then we take that AI subtitling just to help us speed up things. And then we actually go through manually and change the words that make no sense. I'll be really interested to see how it ends up working out with code-based courses, because that's going to need far more of our input to get things right, because we don't want to write down what we're saying. We need to give you the actual formula.
Yeah, in code, good enough isn't quite good enough.
Yeah, exactly. We want to make sure it's really clear for people. And
Mikey, how are you?
I am flustered. So last night I went to bed feeling a bit iffy and slept for 12 hours. So I definitely had a bug. Something I'm feeling a little bit congested at the moment, but if I start coughing, I'll try and do it over here rather than in the lovely mic.
And hopefully tomorrow I'll have good news related to that, because as long-term viewers may have noticed, my energy level's been up and down for the past few months. And every time we say, "How you doing?" I'm always sleepy. That's because I have been always sleepy for about 5 months now, to the point where it's getting a bit silly. So I finally got my blood results, and I'm seeing the doctor about them tomorrow. And hopefully they could just, I don't know, give me drugs.
Oh, the drugs.
Yeah. I did ask Mikey if I could get drugs as a business expense, and his actual answer was, "I don't know. Try it. I'd like to see what happens."
I would be interested to see the results. Whether or not that's a good answer, I don't know. Yes, so I think those were all the announcements out of the way for the moment. So I think we can dive straight in and just discuss what we're doing today and then go ahead and do it. I think that's going to be
Yes. Now today is a Blender themed video live stream. I was going to say podcast, but podcasts we can't see them. So close your eyes, and it's a podcast. As you can see from the title and the doobly-doo. So I am mostly here to read questions, distract Michael, and drink coffee. Unless I lose internet, in which case Michael has to do all of it, and I just go, "I'm sorry."
Yes, there is a chance that we lose Jan today. His internet's been on and off several times already, which is crap. But
yeah,
it's what we deal with. So the idea today, I'm just going to switch over to my small head, and hopefully yes, I thought it might do that as well. So bear with me as I play around with this canvas because it's the wrong size. You might. Oh, we see Jan. Nice.
Just
wrong one. Here we go.
Old time's sake.
Just for old time's sake, there is Jan's forehead again. So yes, that's that. Somewhere on here, there's me. I'm about to appear massive on the screen, but we don't want that. We just want me over in the corner. And I'll just bear that in mind that I'm over in the corner. Right, so today's topic is all about sort of getting a palette list from a website. This is incredibly useful. We've reached a low spec a couple of times, and the idea is to...
Michael, there's an echo.
Is there?
Apparently.
Ooh. There should...
Mikey's are there with you.
Yeah. So the idea of getting a palette list is really just to make sure that the colors you're using in your projects fit together well. Sometimes if you're not using a set of colors that fit together really well, you end up being in a position where you're where it doesn't feel right and you don't know why. But having a palette list helps bring everything together. So I'm just using low spec here as an example. This is where we're going to get our information from. However, you can get your information from anywhere. And one of the issues that we're going to come across straight away is the fact that where you go to get your information, your color palette, may vary. So there will be scope here for you have to alter your Python to actually bring those colors in. And towards the end, I'll go through a couple of different ways that you could do that. With everything, when it comes to any bringing in external information, it's all about sanitizing that data first before you can do any operations on it. So I'm going to do some sanitization to begin with, and then we'll start processing. And of course, you should be able to apply that to other bits of information as they come in. I'm going to pick a color palette with maybe 16 colors. This one here, this Summer Breeze. No, wait a minute, is there an autumn one? Let's search for autumn.
Actually, I believe that's Sumer breeze, like the breeze you get in the Sumer region in Mesopotamia.
Okay. Would it be called fall? Do you reckon I'm going to get more results for fall?
I would just look for a 16 color palette, unless you want to use the one I've been using.
Autumn Comfort 18. I could do with some comfort. That's got 18 colors in it. Let's have a closer look at this. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can go and grab the colors from here. We could literally just highlight all of these here and copy them, or we could go ahead and download them. Now, I'm actually going to do both, so we can see a couple of different ways of sanitizing data. Really useful being able to do that. So I've just copied that, and I'm going to go over into Blender. Wherever Blender is, that's going to be quicker. There we go, new scene. And I'm going to go straight away over to my scripting and create a new script. And then we can name it something. Let's call it Hex to Color. Now, I'm going to spell color in the American way because when I've been playing around with this in the past, I've I've had issues where I spell color the English way, and then when I'm in code, it needs to be spelt the American way, which causes no end of confusion. So I'm going to use the American spelling. Now, I'm going to have this list, but I need to sanitize the data. There are a couple of ways that we could do this, but in this particular case, I'm going to capture this entire thing as a string. So I'm going to call this colors. We might as well start off with something like that. So we've got a variable called colors. Now, I don't want to have to put these into do any additional formatting on it. So I'm going to use 3 apostrophes either side, and then everything will be captured as a string. If we don't do that, it won't include these multiple lines here. The other thing that I want to do is make sure that I can test as I go and play around with things. So I want to change my layout here a little. On Windows, what we can do is go to Window and toggle System Console. And what that will do is it will open up the System Console, and we can check when we run our code what's happening. And we can put in print statements to make sure the values we're getting are the ones that we are expecting. Now, this won't work on Linux and this won't work on Mac. In order to get this working on Linux and Mac, to get the system console, you actually have to launch Blender from the terminal in order to do that. And I believe on Mac, you can actually create an alias as well, and then just click on the alias, and then Blender will launch with the console. I'm not going to go through the details of doing that right now because I'm on a Windows system and I can't do that. But what I will do is on my channel, I'm planning on breaking this down just a little bit further and giving some more detailed explanation. And I'll paste a link to my channel in a bit.
Now, just because it's traditional, Michael, have you considered switching to Linux?
That won't help.
Okay.
The unfortunate truth is that when you're dealing with everybody, you out there, it's likely that you're using a PC. So this will be primarily PC based, and most of this actually will work across all platforms. A couple of OS commands later on, if we go and open up a file to read, that will be slightly different per operating system. We may or may not touch that. If we've got time, we might look at it.
I mean, it's a problem you're always going to run unless you can afford to re-record every video on multiple operating systems. It was more because I always ask you that and you always answer, it won't help. So I thought it'd be fun to do.
Gotcha. In this particular case, you can actually use some code to do that, but I don't know the code specifically, and it's not in my notes, so I'm not going to use that bit. But anyway, let's go ahead and make sure that we can see both of these bits, and then move this across. So this is a new feature in from Windows 10 onwards, I think, that you can do a half screen and then just pull it to one side. If I've blown up the text quite a bit here, and I'm going to do the same over on this side so that we can easily read. I might have to adjust this from time to time to make sure that it fits properly as we go through, so we can read it easily. But there we go. I think we can read everything there. And now if I print out the colors variable that we've got there, what we should be able to see when we run this is all of the colors. Excellent.
Question from Jenny: is colors a built-in keyword?
No. If it was a built-in keyword, it would be highlighted. I'm going to try and avoid built-in keywords where possible. For instance, if you wanted to be absolutely sure, you could call this colors from web, would be a great example. Now, ideally, this would all be in a separate file, and then we can import it in. In fact, if we've got time at the end, I will adjust the code so we have a look at that.
Yeah, and it's probably a good practice when you guys are doing something like this to call it something like hex colors or hex codes or colors from web, because colors can be quite, I mean, you're going to be dealing with colors as an input and an output.
Exactly. And that might get a bit confusing later on when you're naming things. In this particular case, I'm going to just name things long format. So even if it ends up quite a long variable name, I just want to be clear at this point in time. Also, when we get to separating out these RGB values, I'll also be going through things slowly, not necessarily optimally, but you can see the individual steps that we're going through. So we're already 20 lines of code in. Okay, Really, we're only 2 lines of code. We're assigning this and then printing it. We just got it on multiple lines. And again, I don't want to have to go through the process of sanitizing this. You can if you want to, and that can help things out later on, especially if you're bringing in from different sites. Sometimes a bit of manual changing around rather than trying to code in for each individual scenario. It's a lot quicker. So I want to put these colors somewhere. I can't just leave them like this. So I think it's best if we take these and add them to a list. In the end, what Blender will be wanting, if we go down to our materials tab, we'll have a look at changing this base color and the one without nodes. But what it will be expecting in this hex value here, actually expects red, green, blue, and alpha. So we'll have to add an alpha in, even if it's not explicit there. But when we're inputting these values, the only way we can actually input them is normalized values, so between 0 and 1 of R, G, and B. And we're also going to have to make sure that it is in linear space rather than sRGB, which is a bit of fun that we'll get to later on. So we printed out the colors to the web. The next thing that we need to do is have a look through all of these and try and separate them out. And there's a various ways of how we can do this, but there are some string operations that we can use on our code here and just bring them straight in. So what we can do here, I'm just having a look at my notes to see which way would be best to approach this at the moment. Yeah, I think what we can do here is just bring them in as a list. So if we go ahead and create a new list, so list of hex values. I'm running out of space here. Let's make this full screen here. If you want to know how to make things full screen, what you can do is control and space. I'll probably do that multiple times if I need to enter different areas of Blender just to keep things easy enough to read. And hopefully just a bit of report back. Is this readable on stream? Do we need to have it larger, or is it okay for everybody?
It seems to be readable to me, but I'll see if people get complaining about it.
Yeah, brilliant. Perfect.
I mean, I say it seems to be readable. I can clearly read it. I don't know why I put the word seems in there. It seems to be readable, but my brain won't let me read, so...
Okay, so there are a couple of ways in which we can sort of split a line as we go through. So what we can do here is something else, actually, with this here. We can go for list a value of hexes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this colors from web, which is a string. And if you press tab, it will autofill if it already exists in your script. That's important. Otherwise, it won't automatically go there. And we need a string operation. And I believe we can split based upon a particular value. I'm just trying to remember what the... This is the thing, you know, if you don't know something, you can easily look it up. I'm trying to remember it and I can't. Split lines, I think. No, not split lines. This is the thing.
To answer your earlier question, Tinkerer says it's pretty readable. Foreigner says not really, but they're on mobile in an area with bad bandwidth, so that's not on us.
Yeah, if the web, yeah, if it's already...
Good talk.
Not much I can do about that. I can make it a little bit larger. I can go ahead and do that. I don't mind doing that.
We could just invite people around to your house.
Yeah, Python party. And that's alliteration.
I think you need 3 things for it to be alliteration. Otherwise, it's just coincidence.
You reckon?
You can't have a pattern of 2 data points.
No. I think you could.
No.
Okay.
Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action.
Okay, so I believe what I can do here, I hope I've got the syntax right, but I believe I can split this string every time there is a hash mark, which is ideal for this particular situation because that's what basically splits everything along here. And then straight after this, again for testing, I'll be doing lots of this as we go. I'm going to print out my colors from web, and I'm going to mute this one at the top. And in order to do that, comment it out. We're going to put a hash symbol at the beginning, something to watch out for if your information, if your values here contain a hash. That's why we need to put it inside these triple quotes. You can also do that very quickly by control and /. That will do the entire. That will comment out the entire line.
Vertex Rage is saying that the thumbnail for the live stream is awesome. So well done, Mikey. That was all, Mikey. Now, why are you printing colors from web and not list from hex values? I think I've missed something.
You're absolutely right.
Yay! I teach coding.
This is why it's great to have there. So we now have a list, but you'll notice here it's got this new line character in it as well, which is a little bit problematic. We've got everything in list form, which is great. A list is mutable. We can change it around. We can edit it. But we've got this new line character at the end. Now, whether or not that is a problem, well, let's see if we can do a few other things. It is now in list format. So we can take that list, which is the list of hex values, and we can perform a couple of operations on it. One of them is the remove function. So we can remove an empty line as well. We've got an empty string here. So this is a list of individual strings that we've made from our big string that we've imported. So if we remove the blank string, and then run this again. Well, I'm not going to run it again twice. I'm just going to shift it down like so. And now we can see that it has indeed removed that beginning empty string. That would cause us a problem otherwise, because that string itself wouldn't contain any information. And then the other thing we should need to remove here, we could remove the /n. I'm not sure whether that works. It's a special character. It's the new line character.
I would actually split on the /n and remove the hash.
Well, the hash is already removed.
Right. I'm just interested that you went that way around.
Yeah, well, let's try that. That's a great bit of feedback there. And let's see if we need to comment.
Sorry,
out
I don't
that
mean
line.
to be
No. No, I like it because it's a great way of looking at it from different ways. So yes, we could split, and then we can remove the hash. Or indeed, we wouldn't have to do that at all, because what we can do, and we'll be splitting using indices in a moment, but just for the clarity of cleaning everything up, oh, it says that's not in the list. I think what we'd have to do is a for loop in order to do that, because we need to go through each string that's within the list and remove the hash from it.
Or you could take the string, assuming that, okay, so this is where sanitizing becomes interesting, because if we're doing it my way around, if we assume every line begins with a hash, so we would have to remove the blank data first.
Yeah.
You could just remove the first character from that string.
Yes, and we can do that very, very easily as we loop around. In fact, it's you could argue that if all of your information coming in is always in the same format, then what we can do is just loop round each one of these particular strings and just take the second and third, the fourth and the fifth. And I think that's what we'll do in this particular case to make sure we don't need to remove it. We just don't reference it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we need to do is go through each one of these. So our variable in this for loop, we could call it a character. We could call it a value. I'm going to call it a value in this case. In our list of hex values, we're going to do the following. We're going to print out the value. We're going to make sure that we know what we're handling. I always do this whenever I'm going through any of my code. I want it to come out, and yes, it's printing out the value for each one of these. Now, what we can do here, I hope, is we can use square brackets in order to do some string slicing. So then we can go from 0 to the third. And let's see what we get if we go ahead and print that out. So here we've got 8.2 as the beginning and 8.2 as the beginning. So what we can do here is, instead of from 0 to 3, we can go 1 to 3. And that's actually printing out the red value of our string, 82. That's in hex. That's not 82 in decimal, and we'll be dealing with that in a few moments. So we know what we're getting out here. So I'm going to remove the print, and in this particular case, I'm going to use shorthand here. I'm going to go red equals this value here, and then we've got green equals, and again we're going to look at the same place, and this time we're going to go from 3 to 5. Now you'll notice here it's picked up not 0, 1 and 2 are there, and then the third one is not included. That's just the way that this syntax works. And then finally we've got our blue here, which will be value. Great typing, Mike. Value between 5 and 7. And then finally we can do a quick test. We can print out R, G, and B. And what we should get here is each one of the values that we had before. So 82, 78, and 78, 7B, and 85. If we go up here, yes, it matches that. Brilliant. Now, I don't want to have to keep scrolling up and down. I've left it, usually I sort this out much earlier on. I don't want to have to keep scrolling up and down. It's a real pain in the butt. And once you start to get a lot of the things that are similar, it can be really difficult to diagnose. So I want to reset the console each time I press play. So I only have fresh information. So I'm going to go right up to the top of my editor window here, and I'm going to import a module or two. I'm going to import OS, which is going to allow me to clear that screen. And I'm also, whilst I'm here, I'm going to import BPY. Later on, we're going to be interfacing directly with Blender, so we need the Blender Python module. Right, down here, I'm going to clear the screen. So I'm going to go os.system, open brackets, CLS. And that's going to clear this. Every time we run it, it'll just be that information there, which is really, really useful and saves us having to scroll up and down or potentially getting lost, which should be really, really annoying. So what we've got to do here is now put these in a range that Blender actually understands, and it needs to be in the range 0 to 1. So first of all, we need to change these from hexadecimal, which is base 16, to base 10. So if we go in here, and again, this is one of the places where you could be more optimal and chunk everything all the way up the top here. I'm not. I'm going to do the operation on each one individually, and I think that's easier to read as we're following along at the moment. So I'm going to take the value R, and what we can do here is the integer method here is going to take in R as a value, and we need to tell it it's base 16. So we can type in base equals 16. That's not entirely necessary. What we can do is just comma 16. And now when we go ahead and press play, it's converted the number we had before into 130, which will be a value because it's 8-bit values between 0 and 255, which is that 2 to the power 8, 8-bit? I think so. So what we can do here now is do the green value is going to be the int, and then we pipe in G again, comma 16. You don't have to type that base in. And then finally the same again, int B, comma 16.
A question from Jenny. Is it safe to assume that someone would have to indicate which operating system this program is for if they have the OS commands in it?
If you implement them correctly, yes. You can code in a way that's system agnostic. So OS system, this particular command here would clear the system console on any machine. However, if you're opening files from specific directories on machines, you can end up being in a position where, so for instance, there's no such thing as a home directory on Windows, really. And your username, you can't just say go to the user directory and do X, Y, and Z like you can on Linux and Mac. you would have to specifically code in either a hard code, or indeed there is a way of doing it that's beyond my technical expertise, because you actually go into the Windows registry in order to find where that place is on someone's hard drive. The problem is with Windows, or the challenges with Windows, that your user directory you can remap to anywhere you like, and I'm sure you can do that on Linux and Mac as well. But you can actually just put your documents on your E drive, and then you can put your pictures on this drive. It's quite flexible, but it does actually come up with some issues. And obviously, the code I'm writing here will specifically work on Windows because it's working on my machine, but it won't necessarily work exactly on Linux or Mac. We haven't touched any of the bits yet that wouldn't work, and I think we might hit them later on, but we're going to be very literal. We're not going to code something in where you're clicking a button and navigating to a file. We'll be opening literally a literal place on the hard drive, which case you just put your own path in instead.
So Vertex has given a interesting way of doing what we've just done here, to use list comprehension, and it's typed in square bracket, round bracket, float list 1 to 3 over 255.0, etc., etc., etc. Yes, that will work perfectly, and is a great way of doing it in one line. But in terms of readability, especially for like showing people how it works, it actually takes longer to go through a single line of code than it is to go through 40 lines of code. So you're absolutely right. That is a very good way of doing it, and it will save time and memory, but it's not great for instruction.
I'll also show you what I and he's quite right there. This is from line 23 of a test that I did a while back. It obviously won't work in here, but this is list comprehension version of what we could do. In fact, it's a right breakdown of everything that I'm about to do in list comprehension. And as Jan points out there, that would take a while to go through. And you're quite right there, Vertex Rage. If you go ahead and use list comprehension, it can be nice and succinct and do it all in one go. However, for the purposes of teaching, especially beginners, I'm assuming that everybody out there has a tiny bit of knowledge, but not too much. That will just confuse most people as we go through. In fact,
I mean, I'm already slightly confused, but that's mostly because I deal with GD script rather than Python, and because I'm easily confused.
yes. So what this would actually do here is you go for I in the color, enumerate the colors list, and then you can actually iterate through. So here we don't even have to go through each one of those individual things. We're actually doing a loop here to loop through each one of these RGB values. So again, just trying to explain it out of context like that. But yes, list comprehension. If you've already got that skill set, brilliant, use it.
There's also an interesting thing going on where if you start a line with tuple power, um, Jan's brain immediately goes to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies song from the 90s.
Why not? I love it. So
You're welcome.
the next thing we need to do is normalize these values. Now, if I was writing this code by myself, I would be commenting here, separate out RGB. You know, because I'm actually doing this and talking through as I'm going, and I'm going to change it a lot later on. I'm not going to put those comments in because I don't feel it needs explaining, as it's very clear as to what we're doing here. Again, because we're just going through and we're doing one thing at a time. And the more astute out there will go, well, why can't we just do int here and go comma 16 and that's the same as doing this later on? You can do. I'm literally doing it this way for complete noobs so that it's clear that we're doing one thing at a time. Next thing we need to do is normalize these figures here. And because we were going from 0 to 255, a total of 256 values, we can literally go R equals R over 255, and we do exactly the same for G and then B. Now, once we've done that, I'm not actually going to do the conversion from sRGB to linear RGB just yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start plugging these numbers straight in so we can use them in Blender and see what the actual outcome is. If we print these now, we've now got a bit of a mess, but we essentially have all of those values in of a range of 0 to 1. So here we go. We've got 0.5,
Or
0.4, 0.5.
normalized, if you will.
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing in this case. I did have a look earlier if there was a normalize function that I could use, and then I realized that that's a bit irrelevant because you would need to know what your value range
I mean,
was
you
in
could
order
probably
to do.
write a function that would do it, but you would well, first off, there'd have to be floats, and it would
Yeah,
have to know the range.
yeah, exactly. So this caters for it because that is what the range is. Now, I'm also this is a magic number. This is a magic number. I could define at the top of my thing that we're using it's 8. Let me type properly. 8-bit color, and therefore our range. Actually declare it up there to do it properly, and then type in range down here. And we could do hexadecimal, so we put in base equals hex. But I think that
I
would
mean, I
be a
don't
bit
think
of
you need
overkill.
to because you're using hex code, so you're clearly using hexadecimal.
Hopefully, I mean
I mean,
it's one of
unless you're
those
going to write
things.
this to also work with different ways of representing RGB.
Yes, exactly. Now, one of the things that I'm consciously not doing here at the moment is splitting things out into individual functions. Absolutely fine if you break things down into functions. I am just going to go through and make sure that my general script works. It's what I do first of all each and every time. When you start passing around values, it can be very easy to trip yourself up and pass around the wrong value or get the wrong thing in the wrong place. I prefer building things up like this. So this is a personal workflow more than anything. I make sure that everything works in a script form first, and then I actually think about what do I want to actually break out as a function? What do I want to be able to reuse later on? And in fact, I will use a function in this, as you'll see in a moment, that I don't want to do something multiple times. You could argue that this could be a function. In fact, yes, all of these could be broken out into individual functions. I'm not going to do that at the moment, but I am going to do a function later on. So I'm not shying away from it, but I do want to do it where it's where I believe it's going to be better to do. Right. So what do I want to do next? The next thing that I want to be able to do here is go ahead and grab my values and actually create a material from it. Now, I'm going to jump out of here for a moment and jump into the Python console that Blender has built into it. And I love exploring this. And so it may seem a bit magical that, oh, it's all right for you. You know all the commands to use. No, not at all. I will sit here and I'll go pby.data and have a look at the various things that are within the data. And I go, oh, there's materials. Well, let's type in materials. Again, pressing tab will autofill.
And I look up documentation every time I code something. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a thing you do.
Exactly. So we can see here already that our materials contains there's 2 materials in our in our data at the moment.
We can't see that because your head's in the way.
Ah,
Down in front.
there it is. Yeah, that's how you solve that problem. I'll just bear that in mind as I'm going through. Right, so we have in our side here, we actually have another outliner open that has in it, and you can change your normal outliner to that. In fact, let's do that. Normal outliner here, Blender file. So looking at this blend file, what data does the blend file contain? And it's broken down into brushes, cameras, collections, images, lights, etc. So just playing around real quick, if we go bpy.data, because we're looking at the data within this blend file, and we type in li, oh yeah, there is lights there. And we can see that that's got 1 in it. And when we go, oh, wait a minute, I need to bring that up. We've got 1 in lights, 2 in materials. Well, let's go have a closer look over the side. Lights, well, yes, it has 1 light in it. Materials, it shows us 2 materials there. And if we go ahead and have a look at them, dot stroke and dot material. So what we can go ahead and do is we can have a look at what's in a collection at any point. We can go and use the print. In fact, I'm going to hide my lovely face for the moment. Where is OBS gone? Where are you? Now, let's hide me out the way for a moment so I can just not have to go up all the time. So if we print bpy.data.materials, what it should do, all being well... no, it's just printed the same thing. Have I made a mistake there? Hold on. Materials. I thought we could print what's in there. So I think we'd have to do a for loop to print out each one that's in there. So bpy dot, here we go, data dot met materials. But we can reach into each one of these by name if we need to. And there are also loads of other operations we can do on here. So in this particular case, we can create a new material. Look, there's a new just there. And it will give us a hint as well as to what we want to do. So if we want to create a new material and run that, it says here the required parameter name is not specified. Oh, okay. So what we can do here is we can go name equals, what should we call it, Jan?
What should we call it, Jan?
Okay, we'll call it Toucan. Thank you for your suggestion.
That's what I said.
And now when we go ahead and look at our materials, there is a third material called Toucan, and it is available here. Now, one thing to bear in mind is it's got no users at the moment, which means that if we were to reset this file by saving it and reopening it, it will disappear. So we'd have to make that or give it a fake user. So let's have a look back over here how we might do that. And then we can jump back into our script and actually do these things. So so we've got a material named Toucan. So if I open a square bracket and here we go, Toucan, it will auto fill for us. Brilliant. Now, does that have operations we can do on it? Wow, it has a lot. Some of them disappear off the screen. So we've got lots of things here. We can return the name. We know what the name is, but you can return its name. So you can see there are lots of different options that you could do. And consulting the actual Blender Python APIs, usually the best way of working out what these things need for them to come in. Look at there, there's a diffuse color. That's interesting. We're going to be using that later. So that is the diffuse color. That's actually this color here when you're not using nodes. It's the base color. When you're using nodes, you actually have to go into the node tree to the principal BSDF, which will be a shader that's being used. Here we go. And actually go to this node input here and actually change the default value that's here, and then we can adjust the colors. I will go through both of those because I think it's useful if you wanted to use the principled BSDF or just whatever. Oh, wrong section. Whatever it is without using nodes. It's entirely up to you how you approach that. What you tend to find is the base color here might come across into a game engine, and sometimes the use nodes ones won't. So you get a double option there if you want to go through that. Anyway, let's go back to scripting and into here. So we've got Toucan, and we can change the diffuse color. And then we've got four options to choose from. So we could go through each one individually, or we could set it equal to a tuple. A tuple is an immutable list, I think is a fair way of saying it. It's expecting a value between 1 and 0, and it's expecting 4 values as well. So it's expecting red, green, blue, and the alpha. So how transparent something is. Now, with this, if we wanted to have a yellow, if we send in red and green as a value of 1 and blue as a value of 0, we should get yellow coming out. Let's go and test that. So we need to be on the right material. We've got Toucan here, and look at that, it's yellow. Now you'll notice that this little preview here has not changed. That's because originally it was using nodes, so it's expecting this value here to actually be yellow. And there we go, it does update. Now we'll sort out applying it to this one later on. Let's jump back into our code and we can start creating a new material. So what should we call the material? Well, we've got a list of hex values that we're going through. let's just call it that list of hex values for the moment. So whatever the value happens to be, we'll name it that. So let's just print out the value here as well to make sure that what I'm doing is what I think I'm doing. Print this out. Those we can use as our name. Now, if we try and use that as a name by itself, it won't help. And I believe the term is casting. So if I go ahead and go, what should we call this? Color name, I think would be the best thing to call it. And Jan, are you still there?
I am. I just mute myself when I'm not saying
That's
anything, so you don't
absolutely
hear me coughing.
Yeah, you've been absolutely deadly silent. I was like, oh no, there might be hundreds of questions. So the color name
There aren't.
is. So we pass that in like that. Then we can actually print out the color name, making sure everything is working. Alt and P will run our command, run our script, which is the same as clicking the little play button at the top there. So printing out the color name, they are now all definitely strings, which I think they would have been in the first place within there, but that just means that we're absolutely certain of it. So now we're doing that, we can create a new material. So we can go bpy dot data dot materials dot new, and then we open this and we go name equals. I'm not sure of this on the PEP 8 guide for that, actually, whether or not you should have a space there or not. It varies depending on where it is, and I can't remember. So I'm going to go name equals, and I'm going to call it the color name. Now, when we go ahead and press run.
We have a question from Jenny.
Yep.
If you had more than one cube, would all of them be colored yellow?
Only if they had that material assigned to them. Right. So we're creating a new material, and it's going to have the name equal to the color name. So we can see here that we now have all of them in here. How many did we have to begin with? I think we had 18. So if I just highlight these by shift clicking to highlight the first, last, and everything in between, and delete. So I've removed those bits of data from our file. We should find we've got 18 materials. Now, one of the problems is here, I can keep pressing play and it will keep generating the same material with with 001, etc. appended to the name. I don't want to have to deal with that. So I'm actually going to say if the name is already in this list, then don't do it. So if let's say if color is already in, so in that typing, if the color is in bpy.data.materials, then we're going to do the following. If it's already in there, we're going to continue, which will just continue round and go on to the next one. Otherwise, else, we're going to create the new material. Now, at the moment, I don't think this will work. Let's sort out the indentation I've got going on here. There we go. Else, apply that to the new name. What have I missed here? If the color is going to complain that if the color name, I think I need there. So they didn't throw up an error. That's always a good thing. It's added these materials. It's added 18 of them. If I press play again, it's not going up. But if I go up to one of these here and change it, it should add another material. Perfect. Let's do it again. Another material. Excellent. That was 0 before, I think. And I'm going to delete all of these and just run it once more. Yeah, excellent. So now it's not going to add an additional material each time. We will have to purge these though manually as we go. If we don't purge them, we're going to end up in a position where it doesn't.
They don't get updated.
They don't get updated. Yes. So we will have to bear that in mind. If we're looking for an actual change, then we're going to have to make sure that that's there.
Would it be possible, instead of if the color name is there, then replace it? If the color name is there, don't add it, and instead change the color values.
Could do.
I mean, in this particular case, it doesn't make sense because the name is the color value. But if that wasn't the case,
Yes, so if you wanted to update specific colors to a new palette, you could do so, yes. And then, yeah, there's no reason why you wouldn't need to, wouldn't want to do that in that particular case. Now, whether or not it's useful in this case, I think you're right there. I don't think it adds or takes anything away in this particular case from having that. One of the things we can do here, and this is up for debate, but I think what we could do is at the top here, say m equals bpy dot data dot materials, and then just do m new color name. Now we also want to make sure that these have users. Otherwise, you save your file, you open it up again. Let's just demonstrate this. Let's save our file. Let's call it Python Color Fun. And now let's just reload it. I'm just going to revert. And there we go. We've lost how many of our materials? Oh, all of them. Now, in this particular case, we can just press play and rerun them and we get them back again. But that is something to bear in mind, that we need a fake user. So let's open up our Python console again and then go bpy dot data dot materials. And then if we start our open brackets, we can pick one of these. If I go edb, no, ebd, there we go, it's found it. So we've got that material. And now if I go dot, is there anything to, use fake user? That's exactly what I'm looking for. I can copy that. I can paste that in, press enter.
you're hiding the text again.
Ah, I'm going to hide my face again.
Go bottom right.
There we go. Hi again.
There you go.
I will do one other thing, and right. Okay, so we can see once we have a look at the use fake user, when we actually enter that, we get a false reply. So that means we can probably set it to true. And now if we go ahead and have a look at that particular color, we will see hopefully that it's got an F next to it, meaning it's got a fake user, which is perfect. So in this case, we could go M, and then we need to open up square brackets because that's exactly the syntax that we used here. We've got the materials and then straight on to here. And this is the name again, dot use fake user equals true. So then we're protecting our colors. So let's come out of here. Go back in here. There we go. So the color name, which is what we're looking at in this particular case, dot use underscore fake underscore user equals true. Now, if we go ahead and run this, it will probably not have made a change to any of these because we've got this protection clause in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to comment that out for the moment because it's not that helpful whilst we're doing the testing on our code. There we go. And now if we go ahead and run this, we should end up with a load of fake users, which we do, but we do have our duplicate materials. So I'll purge those. Run it again. They've all got fake users. Perfect. So we've done that part of the thing. So we're not going to lose any of those materials we bring in, which would be a real shame if we did do that. A real.
Yeah.
So then the next thing we need to do is we need to take these color values that are coming in and actually set the color. So we've given it a fake user. You can set the color first. The order of this doesn't really matter, as long as it makes sense. So we're going to set I remember the diffuse color was this, I think. And we need to set it equal to something. So for the moment, I'm just going to plumb in a magic number here. I'm going to make everything bright green because reasons. So R, G, B, and then the alpha. I'm going to press play. Going to go back to previous. Now if we have a look at any of these colors, they're all bright green. So we know we've got the information coming in the right way, but we now need to pass it in the RGBA values. And we've been printing them out absolutely fine. I'm going to now add in A here as well. So I've got RGBA. Excuse me. So the next thing we need to do here is actually create a tuple that can be passed in. There's a couple of ways in which we could do that. In this particular case, we could actually do it all the way down here. Now, you can't, unfortunately, just put in RG, G, B, and A. It won't accept that. If we go ahead and run it, he says it won't accept it. It didn't in my testing. Perhaps it has. No.
I mean, I'm interested to see why not. It feels like it should work.
If we pump it in as a list, though, my experience tells me it does work. And you know something else I can do at the moment to make this a whole lot easier for me to work with, and I didn't do it before because reasons. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment out most of these values here. Oh, what did I do there? I didn't mean to remove all. Oh, there we go. It thought it was a comment in the first place. So
I mean, you can remove them and then bring them back from the website. That's kind of what the program does.
That is true. I'm just going to move the string up here, so it's only producing a couple of them. Let's go ahead and have a look at the material colors. Yes, there we go. So we've got the colors coming through. And the reason, if we have it like this, I don't believe that it works because I don't think it actually makes a tuple out of it. We see there, it just leaves them as white. So we do need to pass it in, and I'm going to... we could create the list first and then bring it in, but that's just extra lines of code.
Oh, I see why.
Yep.
Those are 4 different values.
Yes.
Not a single value with 4 entries in it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So making it a list first and then making it a tuple afterwards actually puts it in the right format for Blender to read. So we're in a position here where we've got our first couple of colors at the top here, and we're able to bring them in. But let's actually check and see what the values we're getting. Because when I first did this, I actually used a different approximation of values, and some of them were way out of whack. And that's because I didn't realize that the colors you get are in sRGB, and the colors that you end up using that Blender needs are linear RGB. So there's a conversion that needs to happen. Now, if we have a look here, this is apparently, and it's good because we've named it like this, we can do tests, 14070E. If we open this up and have a look at the hex value of that color, they don't match. And if we notice here, there's a gamma correction value. Now, optically, we can do a very quick approximation, and this does work, but it still doesn't give you the right hex value. So if you wanted to be sort of rough and ready with it, you could go R equals R to the power of 2.2. And that will actually get you a lot closer to the value, but is an approximation. What we actually need, and give us a few moments here to go and grab the formula from Wikipedia. So apologies, this is bright white. And if we go down here, there's lots of maths and stuff, but this is what we actually need to do. We need to transform those values from sRGB to CIE XYZ, which is a linear representation of the RGB. And you'll notice here that we've got a condition. If the value, the R, the G, the B value is less than or equal to this, then we need to perform this top operation. We need to divide it by 12.92. If it's above this, then we need to do something else. So we've got an if statement here, and this is where I think actually creating a function to do that is going to be much cleaner. I just caught the chat then. Yes.
Yep.
A day when Wikipedia and Stack Overflow, Stack Exchange is down. It's a day where code is not written. So I'm not bringing magic numbers in from somewhere random. I'm using the Wikipedia article. So I could here go if R equals, if G equals, if B equals, and do that thing there. that would be incredibly wasteful. This is definitely something where we can do sRGB to RGB. You can name it how you like. That's the function that we're going to do, and we're going to pass in a value into it. Okay, now we do need to define this. If I remember correctly, the way that Python is going to read the script, we're going to have to define it nice and high. Otherwise, it's not going to have access to it. Now, you can do an if name equals main and then run a main function. That's what I would typically do, but I'm not going to confuse the situation with that at the moment. So we're going to use the def keyword. There we go. Jenny, you were talking about keywords earlier. Def is for a definition. In this case, we're going to create a function. It's going to be srg and then RGB, and we need a colon at the end. Now, we're also going to pass in a value here. Now, this particular value will end up being its positional. So if we were passing more than one in, that its name here and its name here do not have to be the same. In fact, the value here, yeah, I have chosen the right thing. So this value coming through is going to be passed into here, and we're going to get something out of it at the end. But what do we need to do? We need to say if the value equals, in fact, that won't work. Ignore me. We need to repeat this with R, G, and B. But we're going to do the complex operation elsewhere. I was jumping ahead of myself there. So we're going to change the values of RGB. We're going to convert them using this function that we're about to write at the top here. So if the value coming in is less than or equal to 0.04045, then do the following. Else, which is anything else, we will do something else. So let's type in value divided by 12.92. That is that part of it. The next part is value. I'm actually going to bring this slightly on the screen. Oh, no, wrong window. Slightly on the screen here, so you can see what I'm following along with. So the first thing we need to do is add on 0.055. So value plus 0.055. And then back here, we need to divide it by 1.055.
Now, as I say, I'm more familiar with GDScript than Python. Would that be plus or plus equal?
Where?
Value plus 0.055.
No, it's just, we're taking the value that's coming in and we're just adding that number to it.
Okay.
Divided by 1.055. And then we need to raise this to a power. So power. Now, fortunately, this is a built-in function. We don't need to import the math library to do that. But we're raising it to the power of 2.4. And then we can close that off. And then finally, we need to return... I'm missing something here, and I think I've been dumb. Yes, I've been dumb. Apologies. We're not actually setting a value to anything. We're just doing a calculation and leaving it behind, which is fun. Why not?
I mean, I do it all the time.
Yeah, but we're going to have to return that value. And that means this function here becomes that value, which then we assign to R. Now, all being well, let's just check that I've written that correctly, that we've got a function here that returns a value. So,
Vertex says there's probably an sRGB to RGB somewhere in Blender already. There probably is. It's just finding it.
Yes, by all means. I may be recreating the wheel, as it were. I have actually looked through Blender. I can't see a conversion, not one that we can use anyway,
Right.
within Python's, which is why we're writing our own. There's no reason why you can't write your own library to do this sort of thing. There are actually Python libraries you can import that will do this for you. But running Python libraries or Python modules that aren't already baked into Blender is a whole new ball of wax. Is that a saying?
Sure.
Yeah.
New ball game,
Yeah, it's a whole
different
new
ball
ball
of
game.
wax.
But yeah, there are modules that we could bring in, but you can't just. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as going pip install and then typing in Pygame. It
So
doesn't.
I've got a quick question related to defining functions, like you did at the top.
Yes,
Um, I'm not quite sure why people who primarily use Python resist the urge to define everything as leopard.
is this a joke that I'm not getting?
Def leopard. The
Now,
dad
if we
joke
go
it hurts.
now, if we go ahead and have a look at this 14070E, we're
I'm still
pretending
here.
it matches. We have gamma corrected it correctly. Right, where's the mute button for Yan? Okay, cool. So we've now got it actually changing it to the right value. Color space. I'm not joking. Oh, let's have a look at this live. So bpy.types. If this already exists in Blender.
Well, that's cool because you've shown the slow way around, and here's the fast way.
Color managed. Sequencer color space. What? I think that changes this down here. Let's bring this up. And so, wow. You know when you change and go full view on one of your windows? I believe that's how you change these color settings here, rather than it being something you can convert with, which is what we're doing. Yes, you could in theory change this to XYZ, but then good luck. It does change a lot. In all honesty, it does change a lot of things if you start playing around with. Here's the color sequence that you were talking.
Mikey did reinvent the wheel, but it was a wheel that no one had yet invented.
Star terms and conditions to apply. So now we can bring in all of these other colors as well. Now that we've fixed that. And then further down here, we've got everything coming in. We're going to have to indent this lot and then uncomment this lot here. So now we've got our protection and we won't create extra colors. We should still only have 18. They should all have, here we go, base color, the correct color. Let's go to another one. Scroll up here, change it to that one there. So 31422D. I thought I'd check more than one just in case it wasn't working.
Yeah, one that didn't look black.
Exactly right. Right, there are a couple of other things that I did want to show you. I have just clocked the time and I'm having fun, so we are going to continue.
Good.
So one of the things that we're not checking here is whether or not it's using nodes. So we're creating a new color. Then what we can do is go and change whatever that color is. And we can say use nodes. And again, you can look, I'm going to be a bit faster now. We could go use nodes equals false, because then and we can add a fake user anytime. I feel like adding it lower down, so I will do. By the way, if you want to move lines of code up and down like this within Blender, even though its IDE isn't great, you can hold down Shift and Control in order to move it up and down. Earlier on today, I was trying to do that. Got really confused because I was using the VS Code shortcut, which is not that. So we've set use nodes to false and then set the diffuse color. However, what we can then do, we've set that part of it, is go color name. Use what? I try not to copy and paste, but for the sake of brevity, yep, speed, I'll do that. So then we can set it to use true. And now we need to go ahead and find how we go. So we're using nodes. How do we change this? Well, rather than looking around at the documentation, you can also copy the full data path. So right click on something you want to have a look at and copy full data path and just paste that in and see what you get. So we've got here the bpy.data.materials, the name of the material we're looking at, the name of the node within that tree of nodes we're looking at, which will just be this. This is okay to start using this as a sort of a default template because it's always going to be principled BSDF by default. If you start changing things around, you're going to have to modify your code to take that into account. So we can substitute this bit at the beginning with just M, because we've already done that. We don't want to just do it for that one color, so we can go color name. And default value here, we can make this equal, once again, our RGBA. And now that we're using it twice, there might be a... I'm not going to this time round, just again for brevity, but there may be a reason now. You've used it here and you've used it here. It's probably a good time to make a variable out of it. I said I'm not going to do it. I feel bad not doing it. Color for Blender.
Vertex has investigated there may not be an exposed function that changes from sRGB to RGB in Blender Python. But good news, Vertex, it's open source, so you can be the person who adds that.
Okay, so I can't not do that, I'm afraid. I do have to make sure that something we're using multiple times, because if you need to change this, you don't want to have to change it in multiple places.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's run that code. And again, we've got our protections in, so nothing's going to have changed this time round. So I'm going to go in and delete those materials from the outliner, run our code. And now when we go ahead and have a look at it, what we should see is not only have we got fake users, as we've asked, we should have the right color in here. I don't know what that was. Here we go. 3010 1D, 3010 1D. Perfect. But if we switched to not using nodes, it also contains the same information.
One more thing I would add. Line 62. If color name in BPY data materials continue, I would change continue for delete material. And then get rid of the else. That way you don't have to purge it. If it's in there, get rid of it and recreate it.
I think that's a good idea if you wanted to do that. I think
well put, mate.
It genuinely does. I think that's a great point. If you,
I don't think it's a thing we have to do here. I'm saying that's a thing you could do.
Yeah,
if you were doing this again and again and again, rather than going in manually and purge it, you could just, instead of continue, you could put it there.
I didn't want to do that because what I didn't want to do is keep bringing in the same. Not deleting just to re-add the same material, because you might have done things to these materials after you've brought them in. So yes, deleting them during here would be ideal, but I wouldn't want to leave that delete code in here, go and alter these materials after I brought them in. Because one of the things you could do, you run this, it's using nodes, you go and start to play around with some of these other options. You actually say that this particular color, it's going to be on all our metallic objects, so we're going to make it look.
But there's a way of fixing that. Rename it.
Yes, this code can obviously get as complex as you want it to, or it could be lovely and simple. Now, for one final thing before we wrap up, because I know it's getting on now.
I'm so hungry right now.
I want to do one final thing, and that is go back to our website here, because there is an option to download this as a hex file. And there is also the option to bring it down as a text file. I'm going to have a look at hex file, see what it looks like, open it up. It's got the figures already in there. That sounds like a good way of starting. We won't have to sanitize our data, but we will have to use something different to open up this file. So I'm going to save this in my downloads. This one's called Autumn Comfort 18, and I'm going to take a copy of that. Hex already exists. I don't need to save that, do I? Duh. Okay. So now what we can do is, I don't know the extension of that file, so we might have to have a quick look at the file again. Hold on a moment. Downloads. Autumn Comfort. It says it's a hex file. Is that a .hex? Yes, it is a .hex. Okay, because we'll need that in a moment to open up our file. Okay, so we're going to go to the top here, and I'm going to comment out this colors from web. because we're not going to use that, but we are going to create another list. So we can still do colors from web. We can still call it that, but this time we're going to open things up. So I'm going to use with open, and what this will do is it will automatically close the file afterwards. Otherwise, you can end up with memory leaks if you open things and don't close them. So I need to go directly to my C drive, and this is where Jenny, earlier on we were talking about the differences between PC and Linux, Mac OS. This file path will be different. So I'm going to go to my users directory. I'm going to go to my user, and of course this will vary from your computer to other computers. I'm going to have a deeper dive look at this because I want to be able to give everybody a way of doing this for each individual operating system. I'll pop those on my YouTube channel. So we're going to open up that file. The reason why we're using double slashes, by the way, is because slash is a special character, essentially, so we need to use 2 of them. And then we can open it up as R. And then here, let's close off that bracket. Good. And this is where an IDE would really help us out here because our code completion is somewhat challenging. And then what I can do is, because in our... Do I still have the text file open? No. If I open it up here, each one of these is on a new line.
Jenny says, can you use username % instead of all that, Mikey?
I have no idea. Probably not is the answer.
Yeah, that sounds...
that sounds very Windowsy.
Yeah, that sounds operating system specific, because I don't think that would work on my operating system.
So once again, we can do colors from web. And then we're going to have that assign each one of those to f dot, and then there's a function we can use to read individual lines. Now, I'm hoping I haven't made any typos there. I'm going to save my file. One of the things I haven't mentioned and haven't done, and I should have done, is save my file. Using Python and having it run multiple times. If you get something wrong, you can cause Blender to crash. Just bear that in mind as we're going through. Right, now if I go ahead and play that, I do have an error. So let's go ahead and open up the console. Line 11 module, no such file or directory. I've got to documents, haven't I, instead of downloads?
Probably.
So Mikey, it's downloads, and let's try running that again. Oh, yes. So we've done some sanitization in the past. We don't actually need to do that in this particular case. So before, what we were doing was doing a bit of sanitization because it had the hash symbol at the front. I know, is that also known as the pound symbol? To me, a pound symbol.
It is. In fact, it was known as the pound symbol first because it used to be used by accountants in pre-printing days as a shortcut for the British pound symbol.
Yes. Well, there we go. So
I'm glad you asked.
I knew you'd know the answer to that. So one of the things that we were doing here is we won't need to sanitize to the same extent, and this is going right way back to the beginning when I was talking about depending on how you're bringing your information in will depend on how you have to sanitize it. So it's best to do that part manually if you can, or get it in a format that's consistent each time. So now we're doing a list of hex values, and we were splitting. Well, we should already have this as a list, and what we can do is confirm that. I'm going to move that over one side so we can see any errors as we go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and literally comment out all of that so we can just test again at the very top. So I'm going to print out my colors from web. And the reason why I've muted everything else, I've commented it out, is so I can see what's coming in. And look at that. We've got this all coming in, and that looks very familiar. So we're not going to have to split it like we did before. But to keep our code nice and short, and instead of having to update everything here, we could change this list of hex values. We could actually set it up here as list of hex values. Instead, bring
Jenny says os.get login appears to be the correct way to get the username. Nice.
I'll get back to that in a second because I'm mid-thought on here. Colors from web. I don't need to reassign that here anymore. So I'm just going to comment that out as well so I can flip-flop if I want to. I'm going to save my file and run it. Colors from web is not defined. Oh, duh. There we go. So we've got everything coming through. It looks like it's working. That doesn't mean it has worked. So what we'll do... Aha! We've got the special character at the end. That's what this invisible character that comes through. See, it's invisible to us until we start adding it into names, and then it's not. But that's a bug to fix another day. 3010 1D. 3010 1D. Perfect. Let's turn off use nodes. 30...
Vatex asks, aside from the educational value of learning how to code, is there an advantage to having a color palette imported as materials versus using it as a texture with one material, using UVs for assigning colors?
That's a great question. So it would depend on how you want to approach your actual modeling. So one of the benefits of having individual materials is it gives you more material control. In fact, what I'll do here, hold on, I want to talk.
I mean, I can think of a use case right now, which is the Godot 4 action RPG, where we're using the low spec 500 palette from low spec from that website. And I've been using them in Godot 3 and into Godot 4. And Mikey wants to make the assets afresh for the upcoming course. So rather than me having to recreate everything in Godot, if he brings them in as the materials he wants, I can just use those materials.
Yes. And to summarize what Jan just said then, rather than repeat, that is, so you've got all of these materials coming across rather than one one material mapped to various UV colors.
Mhm.
So there is an optimization question there. You know, each object might have 3, 4, 5 materials, which might be seen as not optimal. However, it also means that in engine, you can actually reassign those materials and do things with those materials individually. So if you want part of your, say you have a magic spell that makes someone invisible, you can grab those materials that are on that particular character and make them invisible. I mean, that's perhaps
well, there's all kinds of things. Let's say I change my mind about the eyes of a skeleton.
Yeah.
Or this one's a boss and needs a different material. This allows me to do that. Whereas if it was all one material, I mean, I guess we could do that by each time reloading an image file, but now we're going into editing image files and opening a third program. So it's totally doable and it's absolutely fine. It's just which workflow you're using.
Yes, it's genuinely a workflow question. I'm just trying what Jenny said here. Get
login.
Did it just get login? OS get login. Yeah, oh, that just gives me Mikey. It doesn't give me the actual path, which is critical for actually working this out. Now, obviously, you could write some script to actually get the right place, but that just gives me the user that I'm logging into. So I can at least replace the Mikey part for all Windows users with whatever the username is, which is great. And then we'd have to do some string addition, some string concatenation to put it all together. So yes, we can use that. Thanks for finding that, Jenny. Awesome. Any other questions?
Right. Any other questions, concerns, thoughts, comments, jingles, or interpretive dances?
And I hope you've gotten a lot out of this evening.
I mean, I have. It's always fun watching Blender, especially Python.
I practiced some of this in different varieties of it before the stream, just to make sure that I was going the right way. And you know what I did? I decided to start with a completely different method.
Good.
So that's why there was a bit of a pause at the beginning. I was like, why have I done it this way? Okay, we will do it this way then. That's absolutely fine.
Now, just so you know, there's a shadow just under the mic onto your shirt. So the camera right of your shirt is flickering in and out of existence.
No, there's not. No, there's not. Look, I can do that. It's sorted.
There you go.
Now, I hope you've all gotten lots from this evening. As I said, I'm going to break down things in a little bit more detail and more concisely over on my channel as well, because I want to play around with Python even more. And later on, maybe not this year, but maybe at the beginning of next year, there will be a Python Blender course coming. And
Very cool.
this is
And
kind of
I intend to
practice
break
for
down
that as
too.
well. So thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and we shall be back next week with some analysis, and we'll give you more information about that in the Discord
When we've picked it.
Yeah.
Yep. From pathlib, import path.home.
Is pathlib. I'm just going to test that before we go.
Vertex says thank you. Jenny says thank you. Munzer says thank you. Basically, people are thankful.
Excellent.
It's like Thanksgiving, but there's less food.
I'm just seeing whether pathlib is one of the built-in things. It is. Brilliant. So path.home. Path with a capital P, import path. Oh, from import pathlib, import path. So path.home. Pathlib.
I'm not just being weird, by the way. There's some weird arthritis happening in my hand right now.
Okay. No worries. Well, I'm just trying that now. So from pathlib. Pathlib is available for Blender to use without importing anything else. Path with a capital P. No, it doesn't find it from path lib. Oh, I can't type.
You could have just copied it.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a little weird, Jenny. I mean, I appreciate. Yeah, it's a little weird.
Yes, Windows Path. Pathlib, by the way, when I was playing with Blender Python a few weeks back, it was the one that I couldn't remember that is the more modern way of using it than the OS module. So, so that is brilliant.
Nice
one thing it does do though is it brings in C:/users/. So I'm not sure whether it will be able to put the double slashes in. May need a bit of string manipulation to get that working. I don't know.
But we now know who to do that, how to do that, not who to do that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you same time next week. Bye.
Bye. Push it. Push it. Push it.